All right, we're into the super secret Patreon part. I don't know. I'm not good with that sort of stuff just because it's hard to balance all that with actually studying and practicing. You know, like I just did a Shem Fresh lecture for my students the other day. The weeks before that, we did classes just online because you know that's how it is these days. But you know, it takes time and you know to do all the other stuff. It's nice to have a teammate. You guys seem like you guys are a solid team.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The separate bedroom era is over and we're into a new stage.
We are, thankfully.
Yeah, amazing. Here's a question from Freemason Blaine. He's a big fan of your work, actually. What were Damien's sources for the Blue Lotus ritual and the way he lined out the Shem Operation? Hey, there we got Shem Operation.
You're never going to be able to hear it again.
Yeah. I always think of it now after Lori said that about it's like going in for an operation. I always, for whatever reason, picture someone with like a toupee, like they've had like the hair stitched on their head or something.
Because of Shem.
Shem, yeah, yeah. My sources, the big two, one was just friends of mine, people that I learned a great deal about magic from that pointed me towards it. But a big part of it was the work of Athanasius Kircher. You know, he was a German priest in the 1500s, and I think that's the thing that most people. You have it. I have that exact same book. I have that exact same book.
It's a great book.
I think he is one of the most underrated, underread people, personalities, figures in the entire realm of the occult. I think most people, when they come to this stuff, you know, a lot of people, it's like we were talking about earlier, like they have this bad taste in their mouth from Christianity and, you know, being brought up in fundamentalist religion, so that whenever they do stumble across magic or the occult or whatever you want to call it, they automatically want to go to the darker end of the spectrum, like the Poetic stuff and all of this.
Yeah.
No one wants to start digging into the life's work of a German Roman Catholic priest in the 1500s. But this man, his work was key for me to understand how to do this, what it's supposed, like where it fits into a process, because ultimately it's a step in a process. You know, with each of these rituals, you're kind of climbing a ladder, you're building up to something, you're kind of going through the process of creation in reverse. You know, like these ancient masters or these older masters like Kircher and Cornelius Agrippa, you know, they basically said, first you have the source of creation. And then as it comes down a level, you have the fixed stars. And then as it comes down more, you have the constellations. And then as it comes down more, you've got the planets. And then as it comes down finally to the bottom rung, you've got Earth and the elements. And essentially what we're doing in the Golden Dawn tradition is trying to go back up this ladder in reverse, which is why we start with the elemental work, with the lesser invoking and the lesser banishing of the pentagram, to work on the elemental aspects of ourself and reality. And then we progress back up to the planetary work. And then we progress up to the constellation work, and then progress up to the fixed stars work until we eventually reach the source of creation again. Well, it is hard to find like a lot of modern material about the later stages of the zodiacal work, which is where the Shem Operation fits in. You know, you've got the 12 constellations of the zodiac, and if you divide those into 3 equal parts, that's where you come to the deacons of the zodiac, and there's an angel over each of those. And then you go up even further, divide those 36 sections into 2 halves, and that's where you come up with 72. And that's essentially the angels of the Shem Operation. You don't find a lot of material on that in modern work.
There's very little.
But Athanasius Kircher diagrammed the whole thing. You know, you see this one diagram he did, this one drawing he did, and it's suddenly like, bam, you understand what it's for, what it's doing.
That's the one with the big circle and the IHS in the center. Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually, during my lecture just the other day, I accidentally misappropriated it to Tycho Brahe, and I was like, I think that could be wrong, and no one knew, but I was like, yeah, I think that could be wrong. Someone was like, yeah, I think it's wrong. Yeah,
it's actually in that book. You have,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
It's in, I have it. That diagram was one of the big, and once again, like we were talking about a while ago, about how when you learn these rituals in the Golden Dawn, you're learning a formula. Well,
Yeah.
you do the Shem operation the way Kircher did it, using the formula of the lesser invoking or the lesser banishing, only instead of the 4 elemental angels around you invoking those, you're invoking the 72 angels of the Shem operation all around you in the same circle, using the exact same formula that you did these lesser rituals.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen Nick Farrell's Shem grimoire? The
I
Shem
have
grimoire?
no,
It's
I
a
haven't
great
heard
book. You're gonna love it. It's another big one, and it's beautifully formatted. It's on Lulu, and it's a large book, like the Kircher one. Actually, I sort of wish it wasn't on the other side of the room. I'd show it to you. And he's planning a new edition. He said recently, and I think that's because he based this beautiful big Shem book. And he's a hardcore magician. He's one of the sort of lineage GD people from out of New Zealand's Frater and stuff.
Right.
Runs his group in Rome, the Magic Lord of the Aurora Aurea. And he based all of it, the book, on the Golden Dawn Z formulas, the Z docs.
Mhm.
So it's the rituals aren't done in a grimoire sort of traditional fashion. They're done using these complicated Z documents that the angel Raphael gave to McGregor Mathers in Paris, and that
Right.
Westcott helped flush out. So it's a fascinating approach, and I think in his new edition he's going to simplify it down more for the grimoirist movement that is taking the occult world by storm, as we all know.
I'll check that out. Yeah, I've never
Yeah,
heard.
very cool stuff. But there isn't much on it. That's the thing, because they were these 3-lettered names, the explicit names concealed within the Tetragrammaton, right? And then we Christians took them out of the Jewish context of being names of power in the way that the rabbis would use them, and added the angelic suffixes onto the end, and sort of we brought them down. Nick Farrell makes an interesting point. He says by adding the suffixes, what we did was we took these Atziluthic divine names of the Shem and brought them into Yetzirah as angels, so they could act more readily onto Asaya, the world of action. But therefore you need to create the bridge of the archangel that therefore governs them and their
Right.
sign, and so on.
It makes it easier to reach them because you're bringing it down to a lower level, a level of reality closer to the physical.
Exactly. And it's a fascinating process because it's relatively syncretistic, but also a very natural extension of the magical philosophy behind it, of emanation or of invocation, I guess. Yeah, it's not much on the Shem other than a few books out there, and so it's exciting to think there's more to pursue in that. I don't know if you read Aaron Leach's article on it, but he lines up, of course, all the Enochian elders, and the 3 crowns, which each of the spokes of the crowns of the elders is one of the Shem angels. And the elders, of course, were unidentified, except we know them from Revelation. But then, of course, Dee drew the names of the elders through the watchtowers. And so there's a completely unexplored area there for anyone who wants to explore the Shem Operation with through the Enochian elders. That's going to be quite a fusion that probably deserves a few books written on it. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we just worked with Akaya the other day, the sun in Virgo, the angel of practicality, and was very helpful in getting as our COVID restrictions end here, getting life back going again and getting practical steps done. Do you have any favorite Shem angels that have stuck out for you?
Honestly, I usually, every time I've used them, I use all 72 at once. I've never really focused on one at a time for like practical purposes like that. Usually when I would do it like, how each of these things builds on the other. Like you start off with the lesser pentagram ritual, and then you're doing the greater hexagram ritual on top of that, culminating in like the solar hexagram. And then on top of that, you're also adding the supreme pentagram ritual. And then I would go through adding all of the angels, like the 4 angels of the elements, and then the 10 of the tree of life, to kind of compensate for I use those instead of the 7 planetary ones, just because from my own experiences, the angels of the tree of life have the same properties and qualities that the planetary archangels do, but on like a higher, more exalted, purified level. Like the planetary energies have both a vice and a virtue connected with them. Whereas just from my own personal experiences, the angels of the tree of life, they're that same energy, but without the vice aspect of it. So I would use those. And then I would invoke the angels, or the archangels of the constellations of the zodiac in another ring outside of those. And then in another ring outside of those, I would do the 36 angels of the deacons. And then in another ring outside of those, I would do the 72 angels of the Shem Operation. And then in another ring outside those, I would do the 15 angels of the fixed stars. So by the time you go through this whole ritual with the pentagrams and the hexagrams and the supreme pentagrams and all of these angels, it would usually take me anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours to go through at one time. And during the height of my experimentation with this, I would do it sometimes 3 times a day.
Wow. Yeah. When you're using magic that way, it really becomes more on the level of an initiatory, doesn't it?
Yes. It's like you're building momentum.
Yeah.
Like taking a running start.
It's something a lot of people don't realize is the amount of time sometimes we'll spend doing these rituals. That's sort of one of the open secrets. One of the first things people started realizing when I started talking to publicly was they're like, wait, you're doing the middle pillar more than like 3-4 vibrations each? It's like, oh yeah, I've done middle pillars that have lasted, I mean, in the portal grade, my teacher at one point said, well, every Friday now you go in to the temple at sunset after fasting all day and you do this battery of work till sunrise. And I was just ordered to do it as part of my work. And I just said, okay, let my girlfriend know. She was not pleased. But that was my Fridays for the next 8 months of my 18 months in that probationary portal grade. And yeah, I know it works. It works if you work it.
Yes, that's where the real growth and development happens. When you push it like that, I always compare it I always say it's like lifting weights. Like when you go to the gym, like if it's not hurting, if it's not uncomfortable, if you're not pushing yourself a little further this time than you did last time, then you're not getting stronger. Yeah. Same way with magic. You have to push the envelope a little bit every time you're doing it. And sometimes that means, doing it for more than 3 or 4 vibrations.
Yeah. Amen. Damn. It is such a treat, such a delight to talk to you both and talk magic and all this stuff. It's crazy. When I first hearing your story and then in paying attention to what you were up to and hearing you talk a lot, it was a lot of us in the occult community who had the benefit of getting to go through orders or temples or whatever, have teachers all that time. It was so shocking to think that someone could in isolation sort of get so much out of this and transform their lives. And I don't know if you agree that you use magic to free yourself, but it seems to me like that's what the plan was. And it worked. I mean,
100%.
You probably had a few magicians helping you.
And it's crazy. It's kind of one of the teaching moments of doing it. I had nothing to rely on but magic. So it forced me to take it further than I probably would have if I were just out here in the world. But one of the things I always look at that was kind of a teaching moment for me was whenever I did really buckle down and start to use this to get myself out of prison, the thing that we would say every day, how you're basically pulling in as much energy as you possibly can and then stamping that energy with an intent before releasing it to do whatever you want it to do. Well, like the statement that I would use to kind of program the intent into it, I would say, let me be home, free from prison, living happily with Lori, let it come about in a way that brings harm to none, is for the good of all, and in no way let this reverse or bring upon me any curse. And then I would release the energy. Well, it happened exactly like I was saying. I didn't say, let me get found not guilty. I didn't say, let me get a new trial. I didn't say, let them catch the person who actually did this. I just said, let me go home. And that's exactly what it gave me. So one thing I learned from that is be very specific when you ask for what you want.
Yeah, boy, you got what you wanted.
Yeah.
Might have added a few footnotes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we're doing it now.
Yeah.
Doing it now.
Yeah, we've been doing magic for, all these years for his exoneration and to, literally put this case to rest, find out who did it and all that. And now we're up against, we have a hearing on June 23rd to
Congratulations.
get this evidence. Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
Am I crazy here, or do most people sort of feel like we all know who did it? Like, I'm not wrong. Am I wrong on that?
I don't think you're wrong.
No.
I do think different people sometimes disagree. Like some people are like, no, I know it was this guy. Other people are like, no, I know it was this guy. So there are a few different like opinions, but
It seemed like that Hollywood movie, actually, he had it figured out. Like they were like, we need to cast a suspicion on someone. Let's indicate this. And it was like, am I crazy? I don't know. We maybe shouldn't say too much, but it's
that's one of the things that I always think about, about things like that is I don't point the finger at anyone usually, just because I don't want to make the same mistake, with someone else, the same thing that was done to me.
Amen.
I always kind of preferred, this is one of the reasons we wanted so badly to get this DNA testing done, is because that's science. That's a test that shows either this is your DNA or this is not your DNA. And we've always said, let the evidence speak for itself.
Yeah.
Let the DNA point the finger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wish you the best in all that, and I'll lend what I can to the goals. It's a story, man. This is like, you got like, does it still stun you sometimes thinking of just sitting back and going, wow.
Yeah.
Every now and then, but it's also hard to describe because it almost feels like it all happened to someone else. Like it was a different lifetime ago. Like I'm not the same person now that I was when I was going through all of that. So in some way, a lot of times I don't even think about it at all anymore. Like I will go for months at a time without thinking about it. Like I'm not the person that was in prison. I'm not the person that was on death row. I'm not the person that was going through all of that. That's how I feel most of the time. But every so often, every great once in a while, something will happen and I'll think, I'm standing on the corner in New Orleans. I'm not in that cell anymore. And that's when it hits me really hard.
I think I did so much visualization while he was in of him with me, like either on a plane or in the grocery store, just mundane things of just being together in
just imagine him there, eh?
Yeah.
And so in the free world.
Exactly. And so so now, just like he's saying, every now and then I'll walk into a room and see he's there. I'm like, literally like stunned at the fact that he's here with me. And also that thought of how much went into getting this done in every realm, in the spiritual realm, in the material world. And it's like, you think about everyone had a, the prosecutor, the state, the lawyers, the actual perpetrator, the families, everyone had a stake in this. And it could have, but they're not doing magic. So it's a huge difference when you're taking control of, your reality, as opposed to just willy-nilly letting it see what
unfold around you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I feel, and of course that was the answer. And that's why, we were successful in the way that we were.
Yeah. I mean, you had so many people, like from Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh to, I just blanked on his name. That's embarrassing. Pearl Jam guy.
Eddie.
Johnny Depp.
And Johnny Depp.
Rollins, Margaret Cho.
The best.
So many people. And I mean, when we look back on this, we can see that it's all like a chain.
Far out, right?
Like,
it's far out.
It's amazing. I mean, and you think if one single link in this chain were removed, we would not be where we are right now. I would probably be dead.
Yeah.
But we can look back and see how every single thing that every person did was a link in a chain that led us to this moment.
Well, and it's still happening with this DNA evidence that we're doing. We're just seeing, like, sometimes people come out of the woodwork, like some, DNA guy just reached out to us. He has, the cutting edge technology in DNA, and he wants to do it. It's like all of these things, but, and also the other thing that I'm not going to, which I'm working on right now, is trusting God's timing, because I've always been bad at that. I always want it right now. But if you just trust God's timing, it will play out in the most amazing way. And so that's what we're both doing. When I first heard the hearing was June 23rd, my old stuff would have been June 23rd. Why not, April 1st or whatever. And then I just realized it's like, there's a reason for this. Let it take its time.
And it's not just with the case, talking about how we can look back in hindsight and see this chain and all these links in this chain. It's not just the case, it's every aspect of life, like the new book, the rituals book. Like when you're going through horrible stuff, like you don't stop and think, this is going to lead to some sort of victory for me. This is going to lead to me becoming wiser, stronger, a different person, a better person. All you're looking at is, this is hard. I want this to be over with. Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? But once you get out the other side of it, we can look back even now and see like this new book, Ritual, would not be happening, would never have been written. We would never have created it if we would not have went through all of those hardships after I got out of prison.
Yeah, no, that really does come across in the book, in the way in which you guys carefully constructed it. You can even in the formatting of the languages, the techniques aren't formatted in step 1, step 2, step 3, or the good old 90s Llewellyn style. They're formatted in the style of poetry, actually. It's laid out in poetry. That could change when it goes to press, but the sample I was sent, they're in the middle of the page, the techniques.
Yeah.
It's intentional, right?
We want to stick with.
Yeah, they're going to keep that.
That was an intentional
exactly
portrayal in a very creative, poetic sort of fashion.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah. Well, the first two books, like HERMETIC and Angels and Archangels, the first two books that I had done on magic, both of those are more like you're describing, like that classic step 1, go to this side of the room. Step 2, draw this shape. And after doing 2 books like that, I was kind of burned out on writing these like basically instructional manuals. I wanted to do something different. I wasn't interested in that anymore.
A bit more creative. haMeForash was my audiobook to get me through my quarantine when I got across the border during COVID and had to go up into a cabin at my friend's psychedelic retreat center in the mountains of British Columbia. And I'm in a little cabin, isolated with snow everywhere. Oh, had a crazy poltergeist first night too, like 3 triple bangs that shook the cabin, 11, then at 1, 3 huge bangs, because I was planning to do the Abramelin up there, and I took it as a warning, like, no.
Yeah.
I'd open the door to see what the fuck was making. It sounded like a bear was running into the cabin, but the sequences of the beats were even, and they shook the whole thing, and it was insane. I've never experienced anything like that before. I'm not one of those ghost people, really.
Did you go to sleep that night?
After the second triple bang, I could not get back. I was, and the person who had driven me from the airport, I let them take the bed in the cabin, because then they had to go back and isolate from their husband. Yeah, it was a great boon. Otherwise, I would have been in one of Trudeau's COVID jails if I hadn't had a safe and a person. And Jesus, let's not talk about Trudeau. And okay, Hong Kong. That's I am proud of that we finally stood up. We've been quiet this whole pandemic, and it's nice to see Canadians actually like do something. We generally don't do anything. We just sit here trying to keep warm and dry. But yeah, no, it didn't wake the person up at all, and that made no sense. It was so surreal. I had never experienced a physical phenomenon like that. Yeah, and I spent the rest of my time in the in the quarantine, experimenting with low doses of mushrooms and seeing how that affected what energy I could see. And it's crazy in ritual work how it's not just like random trippiness that I was experiencing, especially with golden teachers and stuff. It was seeing the energy with my eyes open more, even brighter and physically. So that was very weird. I know a lot of people don't like me in the magical world talking about this stuff because they think it distracts from like, sober focus on magic. But I think some are called to explore it, and some should keep exploring the liminal places between where these things meet. We're trying to understand the book of nature, aren't we?
Do as thou will.
Yep.
Do as thou will. And if scientists aren't going to study astral traveling into people's dreams, then then us weirdos have to keep doing it on our own and do the best we can until eventually the PhDs are like, yo, maybe it would be nice to understand this fact of experience.
Till they catch up.
Yeah, exactly. It's so weird, right? It sounds so arrogant and egotistical and self-obsessed to be like, oh no, I'm doing magic at the forefront of scientific discovery that they haven't even considered yet. But it's like, it's their fault that we're doing that. It's their fault. I don't want to do that. I'd rather have them taking people into like doing tests, like do the tests, show us what's going on, what is lacking in our understanding of physics that makes us not know this is real possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're the ones with PhDs. Jesus, like, do your jobs. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about before we draw this to a close?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head other than just saying that we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. We appreciate everyone who's taken the time to listen to this.
Yes.
And thank you for your interest, both you and the listeners, for your interest in our latest book. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
And we don't take it for granted.
Well, you're very welcome. And I know my listeners will love to hear this and hear the episode and be very stoked this is great. I didn't expect the podcast to become much when I started at the beginning of the pandemic, but I did it every day and I did a lot of it. So it sort of became a thing and I enjoyed it. It's a fun thing to do, right? It's nice to
do you have like guests on for every episode, or do you just do it by yourself sometimes?
I do sometimes do it by myself. Like I even have recorded me doing things like the invocation of Tahuti and Isis and like done some production on it and put it out there, or other invocations to fairy kings. And I do a lot of the Celtic mysteries, like orderofcelticmysteries.com is my sort of current project, which won't be able to, I'm putting together Yates's initiation ceremonies that were never finished by him into a doable format. But until people can travel, we can't had to have that on hiatus.
Right.
And I started by doing actually commentary on academic studies of esotericism. So because I do have a foot in the academic world, and so I was doing commentaries on academic papers, trying to make them more accessible to mainstream practical occultists and spiritual people who might be otherwise put off by reading something with that many different languages in it and that many footnotes, and trying to break it down for people in a more simple way. And that became more an interview thing, but people listen to the interviews way more than they listen to me comment on academic papers. I don't know why, but the people who do listen, like the academic papers, they really like it, and they're very nonplussed that I don't do more of it. And I'll try to, but it's like, there's a lot to do. I do like to spend some of my time actually practicing magic or playing music or going out for walks.
There you go.
But there'll be more good guests coming on. I mean, I still haven't written back to Steven Skinner, so I got to do that and try and keep all the irons in the fire. It can take a bit of work, but yourself. Who's next? Who are you on next? Do you know?
Do you know?
No.
That's what Mike's for.
Yes, exactly.
The only thing my job is to be where they tell me, when they tell me, and not ask questions.
That's beautiful. Well, I hope you talk to some good people. Actually, who wanted to talk to you? Justin Sledge, Dr. Justin Sledge wants to talk to you on his Esoterica podcast. It's over 100,000 subscribers now. It's
wow.
Huge. Yeah, he wants to talk to you.
Would you put him in contact with
Yeah,
Mike?
I can email him because he and
Okay.
I've been talking about a Hebrew translation project I'm working on. I do I work in Hebrew and Aramaic translation, and I'm working on something that I can't talk about on the recording, but I'm
Lori
happy
actually
to.
does Aramaic prayers every day.
I am
Yeah.
okay. I am so like I'm learning the Lord's Prayer and the Beatitudes in Aramaic, but it also
Mhm.
comes with, the translations of the words and what they actually mean in Aramaic. And I'm so afraid I'm just crucifying the words.
Oh, yeah. No, I'll help you. We can find each other on Instagram or whatever the best way to communicate is.
Yeah, for me, it's email because I don't do any.
Oh, perfect.
Or just text. But someday I would love to just like say it. And if you could tell me if I'm like so far.
Yeah, no, I can definitely help you with that. Like,
It's
I was very
amazing,
lucky
isn't it?
to have I was at one of the only seminaries in the world that had a professor that taught Aramaic. And even my Hebrew teacher, Rahel Halaveh, an Israeli Hebrew teacher who taught us biblical Hebrew, she even did the Aramaic year with us because
Yeah.
she was so fascinated by it. So I was very lucky to get a solid intro to Aramaic.
Oh, that's
And,
amazing. Yeah.
it's a beautiful language, very similar to Hebrew. Like, for example, for the listeners who want a fun line to say in Hebrew, you would say, Ani lo Amerikai. I'm not an American. Ani
Ah.
lo Amerikai. And in Aramaic, it would be Anach lach Amerikaya.
See, that's what I'm missing is that.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm just,
Mel Gibson's The Passion came out while we were doing that year of class. So we went to a special subtitle-free screening.
oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was trippy. I was very blessed. Now, what can I say? I do feel
Yeah.
I've had a few blessings, but yeah, no, we'll email.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
and that sort of thing. Well, let's formally wrap up then. So thanks for Magic Without Fears and all of that. Yeah, it's just been a treat.
For us.
Yep.
All right. Well, let me stop this and say a proper farewell. Cheers. Thanks for listening, everyone.